Working harder is not what keeps people employed. In a surprising number of workplaces, it does the opposite. You stay late, answer messages no one else touches, fix mistakes you didn't make, and quietly become the person everyone depends on. Meanwhile, someone who seems to do half the work leaves on time every day, avoids the stressful projects, and somehow survives every round of layoffs as if they're invisible. That isn't bad luck, and it isn't because your manager is blind. Hey, I'm Brian, and I spend way too much time thinking about the hidden rules that determine who actually succeeds at work versus who just works the hardest. Most people think lazy coworkers keep their jobs because management is incompetent. The truth is far more uncomfortable. The workplace often rewards something completely different from effort, and once you understand what that is, you'll stop measuring your career by how exhausted you feel at the end of the week. Today I'm going to show you the 4 hidden reasons lazy people almost never get fired, even when everyone around them knows they contribute less than everyone else. More importantly, you'll understand why ambitious people accidentally help keep this system alive, and what you can do to stop becoming its favorite target. If exposing the workplace rules nobody teaches sounds useful, consider subscribing. Every week we break down the invisible dynamics that quietly shape your career long before your performance review ever does. Every office has a Steph. Steph walks in at exactly 8:58 every morning. Never early, never late, just close enough to look punctual. He puts his coffee on the desk, opens his laptop, scrolls through emails with the relaxed confidence of someone who knows nothing urgent is waiting for him, and somehow disappears whenever the difficult work begins. By 10:30, the team is rushing to prepare a presentation. Steph suddenly has another meeting. At noon, someone asks for help with a client issue. Steph promises to circle back later. Later rarely comes. When deadlines get close, something almost magical happens. You stay another hour. Your teammate cancels lunch. Someone else rewrites half the report. Steph contributes a few edits, joins the final meeting, nods at the right moments, thanks everyone for the hard work, and leaves with the same calm expression he arrived with. The strange part is that nobody openly confronts him. People complain in private. They roll their eyes when his name appears in another project meeting. They joke about how little he actually does. But when promotions are announced, Steph is still there. When budgets are cut, Steph is still there. When another reorganization sweeps through the company, somehow Steph survives again. You tell yourself that eventually someone in leadership will notice. Eventually never seems to arrive. Here's the uncomfortable twist. If you're the dependable person who always steps in when Steph disappears, you may be doing more than covering for him. You may be helping create the exact conditions that allow him to stay comfortable. And that's because Steph understands something about the workplace that most hardworking people never stop to learn. If you're new here and just subscribed, comment your name below. I read every comment and shout out new subscribers in my next video. I do appreciate you joining me on this finance journey. The first reason lazy people rarely get fired is surprisingly simple. They don't try to be outstanding. They figure out exactly how little is required. I call this the minimum performance threshold. Most ambitious professionals assume every extra task earns extra respect. Steph assumes something different. He studies what actually gets measured instead of what people merely talk about. Notice how carefully he operates. He never misses the deadline that senior leadership personally tracks. He answers the email that includes his manager. He finishes the assignment that appears on the executive dashboard, but the optional brainstorming session, someone else will cover it. The documentation nobody checks, it can wait. Helping a teammate who's overwhelmed, not technically his responsibility. To everyone watching from the outside, Steph looks lazy. From Steph's perspective, he's simply refusing to spend energy where there are no consequences. Researchers studying workplace performance have consistently found that employees adapt their behavior to whatever organizations choose to measure and reward. If promotions, bonuses, and performance reviews focus on a handful of visible outcomes, people naturally concentrate on those outcomes while ignoring everything else. The system quietly teaches them where effort matters and where it doesn't. Hardworking people often do the opposite. You volunteer before anyone asks. You solve problems that were never assigned to you. You improve processes because you genuinely care. You answer messages after hours because you don't want anyone else to struggle. Those actions make you valuable, but many of them are invisible. Steph understands a truth that feels almost unfair. Being helpful and being evaluated are not the same thing. Every hour you spend doing work nobody tracks makes it easier for someone like Steph to spend that same hour doing absolutely nothing. And if that realization feels frustrating, it gets even worse. Because Steph isn't just managing his workload, he's managing his image. This brings us to the second hidden rule. Success at work isn't always determined by productivity. It's often determined by visibility. I call this the visibility economy. Steph may seem disengaged most of the week, but pay attention when the department head schedules a meeting. Suddenly he's prepared. He asks thoughtful questions. He volunteers a polished update. He speaks with confidence about the project as if he's been deeply involved from the beginning. Then, once leadership leaves the room, he quietly fades back into the background. That's what I call selective performance windows. Steph doesn't perform consistently. He performs strategically. Instead of investing energy into every task, he invests energy into the moments that shape other people's opinions of him. Psychologists have long observed that people form surprisingly durable impressions from a relatively small number of highly visible interactions. Managers are no exception. When they regularly see confidence, professionalism, and calm during important moments, those impressions often outweigh dozens of ordinary workdays they never witness. Meanwhile, you're buried in the actual work. You're fixing spreadsheet errors, reviewing contracts, helping new hires, answering urgent requests, keeping projects from falling apart. Ironically, the more essential your work becomes, the less visible it often is. Steph also understands another uncomfortable reality. People tend to remember who presented the finished product more than who quietly built it. So when the project succeeds, Steph naturally positions himself close to the success. Not necessarily by lying outright, but by speaking as though he played a larger role than he actually did. He says, "We accomplished this." He summarizes the team's progress. He thanks everyone. And because most hardworking people dislike sounding self-promotional, nobody corrects the record. Over time, leadership begins connecting Steph with successful outcomes while connecting you with reliability. Those sound similar. They are not. Reliability earns more work. Visibility earns opportunity. And once those two begin separating, the next hidden rule becomes almost inevitable. That separation creates the third hidden rule. The more reliable you become, the less accountable Steph has to be. I call this the accountability shield. At first, it doesn't look like favoritism. It looks like practicality. Your manager has two people to choose from when something important lands on the team's desk. One of them always delivers. The other is unpredictable. Who gets the assignment? You already know the answer. Not because it's fair, because it's efficient. Managers are under pressure just like everyone else. They have deadlines, client expectations, and executives asking for updates. When they need certainty, they don't gamble. They hand the work to the person who has proven, over and over again, that they'll find a way to get it done. That's you. And every time that happens, Steph learns another lesson. He doesn't have to improve, he just has to wait. Watch what happens when a project starts falling behind. Steph misses a checkpoint. He forgets to send an update. His section of the presentation is still unfinished the night before it's due. You see it happening. Your stomach tightens because you know exactly what's coming next. You tell yourself you're only stepping in this one time. You finish the slides. You rewrite the report. You answer the client. You stay late because you don't want the entire team to fail. The project succeeds. Leadership congratulates everyone. The crisis disappears, and so does the evidence that Steph caused it. That's what I call passive delegation. Steph never officially asks you to do his work. He simply doesn't do it. He understands something most people never consciously recognize. In teams filled with conscientious people, unfinished work behaves like a vacuum. Someone eventually fills the space because the cost of failure feels too high. If that someone is always you, Steph never experiences the consequences that would force him to change. Organizational psychologists have long observed that highly conscientious employees are more likely to accept additional responsibilities, even when those responsibilities fall outside their formal role. Over time, managers begin seeing this as the normal state of affairs rather than an exception. Your extra effort quietly becomes the baseline expectation. That's the trap. The better you are at rescuing the team, the less visible the original problem becomes. Steph isn't protected because he's exceptional. He's protected because you're dependable. And once that pattern repeats enough times, something even more surprising happens. Steph stops being a management problem altogether. This brings us to the fourth and most uncomfortable reason of all. Steph is not a problem for the people who have the power to fire him. I call this the stability illusion. Think about the situation from your manager's chair. The reports are getting submitted. Clients are staying happy. Deadlines are mostly being met. The department isn't in chaos. From your perspective, that's because you've been carrying far more than your share. From your manager's perspective, that's because the team is functioning. Those are two completely different stories. Now imagine what happens if Steph is fired tomorrow. Someone has to recruit a replacement. Someone has to interview candidates. Someone has to train the new hire. Productivity drops for weeks, sometimes months. There's uncertainty. There's disruption. There's risk. Keeping Steph may not be ideal, but replacing Steph is expensive. Managers don't just evaluate performance. They evaluate disruption. As long as someone like you keeps absorbing the hidden workload, Steph appears inexpensive to keep around. He doesn't argue with leadership. He doesn't create public conflict. He isn't generating formal complaints. He shows up just enough to avoid becoming the center of attention. In other words, he isn't creating fires. And in many organizations, managers spend far more time putting out visible fires than searching for invisible leaks. Here's the irony. The very qualities that make you valuable, your reliability, your ownership, your willingness to solve problems before anyone notices them, also hide the evidence that the system is failing. You become the invisible safety net. Every time Steph falls, you catch him. Every time the team stumbles, you steady it. Every time leadership might have noticed a deeper issue, your competence smooths everything over before anyone higher up ever sees the damage. The system isn't rewarding laziness. It's exploiting reliability. That's an important distinction, because once you understand that, you stop blaming yourself for not getting the recognition you deserve. You start changing the role you've been playing in the system. None of this means you should become Steph. That's the wrong lesson. The goal isn't to care less. The goal is to stop giving away your effort for free. Start by setting clearer boundaries. When work consistently spills onto your desk because someone else failed to do theirs, pause before automatically rescuing the situation. Sometimes the problem needs to remain visible long enough for the people responsible to actually see it. Second, become intentionally visible. Don't assume good work speaks for itself. It often doesn't. Share progress. Document your contributions. Make sure the people making career decisions understand the value you're creating, instead of quietly hoping they'll figure it out someday. Finally, stop measuring your worth by how much you can carry. Measure it by how much impact you create, without becoming everyone's permanent backup plan. Being dependable is a strength. Being endlessly available is a vulnerability. The workplace will often keep taking as long as you keep giving. Recognizing that isn't cynical. It's strategic. And once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. If this video changed the way you see your workplace, subscribe for more breakdowns of the hidden rules that shape careers long before promotions, performance reviews, or layoffs ever happen. Because the biggest advantage in your career isn't working harder than everyone else. It's understanding the game well enough to stop playing by rules that were never designed to reward your effort in the first place.